Hello everybody and welcome to the Aether Revolt review. My name is Sword or Fat underscore Sword. Um, and we're going to talk about my first look and the first impressions of Aether Revolt today. Let's go ahead and take a quick peek at it. New season begins. I only made it to level 6. That's okay, I don't have a lot of cards. There's all of my quests for the day. I'm of course going to go over those when I get to them. Alright, so let's go ahead and pull up the card collection and see what we got today. Let's go down to just what came out in Aether Revolt. Perfect, 138 cards. And we'll start out with Aerial Modification. Alright, really cool enchantment. Enchant creature or vehicle. As long as enchanted permanent is a vehicle, it's a creature in addition to its other types. Enchanted creature gets a +2/+2 and has flying. This is a really cool card. Right now, the big thing with Aether Revolt and Kaladesh, hopefully I'm saying that properly, the big deal with that is that these cards, they're doing a lot of artifacts that can, when you tap a certain number of creatures with a power equal to a number, it turns into a creature and it can attack or defend, and you can do that at any time, which is kind of cool for the late game because it makes a lot of your cards better. You know, if you have a bunch of little cards, you can use them to power up one big card later. It's kind of cool. This makes it into a creature, so you don't have to tap creatures, and it gives it a +2/+2 in flying. Alright, Aeronaut and Admiral. Flying. Vehicles you control have flying. They're really buffing out the vehicles here. Now, of course, we're going over the white cards first. This is a human card. It's a pilot. Kind of an interesting card because this is giving you a creature plus flying. It's something you want to protect. It's always kind of weird with creatures because there's so many ways to kill creatures, but it's a good start. It can't be bonded or anything like that, though. Aether Inspector, or Aether. Creature Dwarf Artificer. Hope I say that right. Vigilance. When Aether Artificer enters, you get that many of those coins, energy counters. When Aether Inspector attacks, you may pay 2. If you do, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. Very cool, especially if you're using a weenie deck or an overrun deck where you're throwing a lot of little creatures. There may be other good things here too. The really cool thing with both decks is you're going to see a lot of synergy here, especially with these energy tokens. Kaladesh was a lot about the energy tokens, but they were also a lot about getting servo creatures on the field. Airdrop Aeronauts. Flying, Revolt. When Airdrop Aeronauts enter the battlefield, if a permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn, you gain 5 life. That's kind of cool because if someone plays an instant card, if something like that where it removes a card, or say you take one off the battlefield, say you return something to your hand, this allows you to use that in combination. I'm not too thrilled with the card. I think there's some better options, especially for its cost, but it's not so bad. Alright, Alley Evasion. Choose one. Target creature you control gets a +1/+2 until end of turn. Return target creature you control to its owner's hand. If you're doing a deck where you have a lot of abilities that can be, once it's put onto the field and you can use that ability, it's kind of cool. But with this card here, there are better options, especially in white where you have a lot of cards that can go, oh, pay 2 more and then get the other ability too. So unless you're doing a lot of cards where when they come onto the field you get an ability or something like that, it's not the greatest. Audacious Infiltrator. Audacious Infiltrator can't be blocked by artifact creatures. This is cool. It's a 3/1. It's an alright card. For 2, it beats out some of the other 2-cost cards, but really we can live without it. Bastion Enforcer. 3/2 for 3. Just a simple creature card. It's kind of cool, especially if you want to go with like a dwarf theme, but just another card. Alright. Call for Unity. Revolt. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn, pay a Unity counter on Call for Unity. Creatures you control get a +1/+1 for each Unity counter on Call for Unity. This is a cool card. That's where that other card comes into effect. The Alley Evasion, which will be nice because you can constantly be popping cards on and off the field to help you get those counters on there. Yeah, so with more counters on there, the more 1/1s each card goes. This is great for any kind of synergy deck where you have a lot of stacking effects. and we'll go over that later. Caught in the Brights. Enchanted creature. Enchanted creature can't attack or block. When a vehicle controls attacks, exile enchanted creature. That's kind of a cool card, especially for this set, because this stops that creature from attacking or blocking, so it takes care of a problem for a turn. And then later, when you pull out your thing, you can just get rid of the creature altogether. This solves a lot of problems with like Fatal Bonds. Now, Fatal Bonds is cool because it also stops them from using abilities that can cause problems and things like that. So, you know, the more stuff you do, the better. And then it can just remove the card altogether. Sorry about that, guys. The headphones were dying. So, it's kind of a cool card. Is it worth it? Maybe not, but it is a little bit cheaper than Fatal Bonds, or the same price, I think, cheaper than Fatal Bonds. So it can be used if you're using a lot of weapons or vehicle cards. Here we go. Conviction. Enchant creature. Enchant creature gets a +1/+3, and then return Conviction to its owner's hand. This is kind of a cool card. It's a simple, easy aura card, so you can pull them from your deck if you've got cards that allow you to do that. But more importantly, is that this card has an instant ability. Whenever you activate an ability, it's on the top of the stack, so if someone plays a counter spell, or say someone does a Fatal Bond, you can instantly pull that card off and it can't be negated. So that's kind of cool. Let's go to the next card. Countless Gears Renegade. Creature, Dwarf Artificer, Revolt. When Countless Gears Renegade enters the battlefield, if a permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. It's okay. I find it a lot more useful than, say, some of the dwarf cards we were just looking at, because at least you're getting one more creature out of the deal. And depending on how you use cards to sacrifice for something like this, or even overrun the opponent, it can be very useful, especially within combination for Call of Unity, which just says creatures you control. It doesn't say anything about tokens or artifacts, which is great. So as long as it's a creature. Let's see. Dawn Feather Eagle, creature, bird, flying. When Dawn Feather Eagle enters the battlefield, creatures you control get a +1/+1 engage vigilance until end of turn. It's a 3/3 5 cost creature with flying. Its ability is kind of cool. With that card that allows you to return cards back to your hand, it could be multifaceted, but it doesn't have flash, and it's kind of a high mana cost. I wouldn't worry about it. If you have one and you feel like you can work it, but I would only rate this at the situationally good. Alright, on to the next one. Deadeye Harpooner. Revolt. When Deadeye Harpooner enters the battlefield, if a permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn, destroy target tap creature an opponent controls. That's kind of cool. Says left the battlefield, so I'm assuming that also means when they're destroyed or sent to the graveyard, something like that. So if you attack and one of your creatures dies, you can play this in response. This creature at the end of your turn could be useful. Deft Dismissal. Sorry about that. Deft Dismissal deals 3 damage divided as you choose among 1, 2, or 3 target attacking or blocking creatures. This is nice if you're playing against a weenie deck or an overrun deck, and I'm sure we've all been hit by this before, where it's just they're being thrown at you, constantly being thrown at you, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. So definitely could be useful there. So something to kind of keep in mind. Not bad card at all for a white deck, as you can see. Exquisite Archangel. Creature angel, flying. If you would lose the game, instead... Jesus! If you would lose the game, instead exile this angel, and your life total becomes equal to your starting life total. Wow! There's the white card everyone wants. That's the white card everyone's going to be looking for. It's a sweet card. Hands down, no questions asked. This is exactly what we want. It's a little bit high in cost, of course, but this is a nice card to have. You can't lose the game, and you start back at 20, essentially. Very cool card. I also like that they put, you're total becomes equal to your starting life total. This is going to change a lot for Two-Headed Giant. Now you're back at 30, which is even more menacing. Cool card. This is what white is all about. Kihara per Osprey. My apologies on the pronunciations. 3-cost flying for 2/2. You know, if you just need another flying card for the deck, it would be just fine. Solemn Recruit. Double strike. I love double strike. Revolt. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn, put a 1/1 counter on Solemn Recruit. This is a perfect card. This synergizes so well with all the other cards. So if you're doing a lot of things where you're pulling cards to and from the field, or you're throwing them at your enemies, right, because token creatures, you're trying to overrun them, this is going to get powerful quickly. Now, I'm assuming you can only get 1+1/+1 at the end of your turn, so you can't be throwing away a ton of creatures, but if you do at least one, it'll power up. So it can't become super powerful, but it has the right steps to do so. SRAM's Expertise. Sorcery. Create 3 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature tokens. You may cast a card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. I kind of dig this card. It's a 2-for-1. In an overrun deck or something like that, super useful. Yeah, this is kind of a really good card, in my opinion, especially if you're trying to do a lot of cards on the field. And more importantly, if you're trying to combo something, and some cards will have effects similar to Madness or something like that, where if you've already played a card this turn, this card will cost this much instead. So it's kind of perfect. I like this card depending upon how you're going to do it. I'm going to put this in the good class for sure. SRAM Senior Edificer. Legendary creature, Dwarf Advisor. When you cast an aura, equipment, or vehicle spell, draw a card. I mean, that's pretty sweet. Any sort of low-cost white deck or anything like that, you're going to cast auras, equipments. Vehicles are going to be a little bit more to this, but most white decks are going to have a lot of enchantments, which are probably going to be auras anyway. So this is pretty sweet. Thopter Arrest. When Thopter Arrest enters the battlefield, exile target artifact or creature an opponent controls until Thopter Arrest leaves the battlefield. This is cool. This is kind of like the ring cards, the Oblivion rings, that we've kind of been missing for a while because we no longer have core sets, 2015, 2016 core sets. So, you know, this is kind of nice in its own way. So yeah, I'm going to say that that's a nice card. It's a good replacement for Oblivion Ring. So we're going to call this good. With that said, from there, and we're on to the blue. Aether Whale, flying. When Aether Whale enters the battlefield, you get 2, 4, 6. Oh, it says 6 energy counters. Pay 4, return Aether Whale to its owner's hand. This is kind of nice. Chances are you're going to have some other cards in there that are going to give you energy counters. And every time you play this card anyways, you're getting 6 more. So this is, albeit an expensive way, but kind of a cool way to get your counters on there to start building them up. And then if you have other cards like we've already seen from the white set, and I guess we can go over that in a second. Yeah, if you have some other cards where if something leaves the battlefield, this is perfect, and you don't have to worry about using cards from your hand either to do it. It is expensive. It is a 6-cost card. You're only going to have 1 or 2, maybe 4 6-cost cards in your deck usually. I mean, there's always exceptions. But with that said, you know, there's a good way to start. Aether Swooper. Creature, Veldican Artificer. Flying. When Aether Swooper enters the battlefield, you get 2. Just like I was saying a second ago. When Aether Swooper attacks, you may pay 2. If you do, create a 1/1 colorless server artifact creature token. Sweet. Just another way to get more creatures on the field. This, in my opinion, is worth the 2 cost. Yes, it's a 1/2 and you're paying 2 for it, but you're getting multiple things from this. If you're trying to just get energy cost or energy counters, bam, you're getting 2. You have a flying creature that can defend well, or at least attack, and they usually can't do anything about it depending on the deck. And more importantly, you can use those energy tokens or other energy tokens to keep building on it. And if this creature dies, you're replacing it with a 1/1 colorless artifact anyways. Baral's Expertise. Sorcery. Return up to 3 target artifacts and or creatures to their owner's hands. You may cast a card with converted mana cost 4 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. I'm always very iffy about these cards because, first of all, it's a sorcery. It's not an instant. To me, that says something. That's kind of almost a problem in some ways. But it's fine. It'll do the trick. If your opponent has a lot of cards, or say maybe they have a lot of cards in their hand, maybe you're making them draw a ton, it's kind of a good way to do it. Or if you want to set up so that they draw cards and then they're discarding cards, that's another good way to do it too. Especially with the fact that you can cast a 4 cost or less card too. So a nice blue and black deck could be very interesting with this card, but it's very high cost. That's 5 mana. In my opinion, not worth it depending on how you're building the deck, but hey, I've seen crazier crap work. On to the next one. Baral, Chief of Compliance. This is kind of cool. He must work for the company or something like that. Legendary creature, human wizard. Instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Whenever a spell or ability you control counters a spell, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. Yes! I love these cards. First of all, I'm a huge fan of counter spells myself. I come from a very old Magic where counter spells used to be in every set and they only cost 2 islands. So this is kind of cool. Plus it makes it so your counter spells are 1 less. So now we have other counter spells. Counter Helix, I think, for instance, which costs 3. 1 colorless and 2 blues. And then of course you can make it a 3/3 island or something like that, or a creature. Anyways, I don't remember quite off the top of my head. But this actually turns it into that 2 color or 2 mana cost, 2 blue counter spells. This is definitely a card after my own heart right here. Bastion Inventor. Improvise. Your artifacts can help cast this spell. Each artifact you tap after you're done activating mana abilities pays for 1. Wow. Hexproof. This is a cool card. You can tap your artifacts, so if you're building a lot of artifacts onto the field, to pay for this card. I know it's a black, it's not a silver, so it's a common card, but this is a good way to maybe throw a little extra power into your deck without sacrificing your mana cost. Because if you're putting a lot of artifacts or servo creatures onto the field, this may be the way to go about it. Efficient Construction. Enchantment. Whenever you cast an artifact spell creature, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. That's exactly what I'm talking about. There's so much create artifacts that would work perfectly, would it not? The synergy there is very good. I would love a card like that just to have, because if you do that properly, you're only paying what? 1 blue? Heaven forbid for a 4/4. And if you've got an abundance of artifacts on the field, you now have a bigger threat. And again, it's kind of a cool way to make your a bunch of small creatures effective in the late game. Hinterland Drake. Flying. Hinterland Drake can't block artifact creatures. It's a 3 cost for 2/3 and flying. I don't think the fact that it says it can't block artifact creatures is that big a deal, even for this set. Not, it's a situational card at best. Not trash tier, but not worth it in most cases. Ice Over. Enchant artifact or creature. Enchanted permanent doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. These are cool. We've had a lot of these in the past. It's just one more way to do a control deck, especially if you're working with the legendary card that we just saw, Baral, I think. It only cost 1. It's not a bad way to go even for 2. It'll stop you from having to worry about constantly having artifacts on the field that you don't want to deal with. Leave in the Dust. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Draw a card. It's an expensive draw card in my opinion. At least with the other card that was white, it was a 1 cost, or even 2, but I think it was 1. Regardless, you're paying 4 to draw a card and do the return trick. For blue, this is very normal, but you would only pay 1 or maybe 2 for that ability. So 4 for draw a card and use that ability. I think your mana can be spent in better ways. Mechanized Production. Enchantment Aura. Enchant artifact you control. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a token that's a copy of enchant artifact. Then if you control 8 or more artifacts with the same name as one another, you win the game. Sweet! Wow. Talk about a cool card. Now, I know a lot of people are like, oh, but when are you going to do that? Think about Thopters. Think about servo creatures. Think about all the creatures we just talked about that are constantly putting more artifact creatures onto the field, or servos or Thopters or whatever. So if you've already got 8 on the field and you pop that on there, or you just use it to make a copy of a really good artifact card. How long is it going to last? Probably not that long. Your opponent's probably going to be gunning for it, but maybe it's a good way to keep them occupied dealing with this as you win the game. I do it quite often in a lot of my decks where, or if you do it well with Planeswalkers, your Planeswalker's not your win-all, end-all, be-all cards, but they're there and they're a problem and they're a nuisance, and if they're left, if they're left alone and not to be dealt with, then that becomes a serious problem, and this is kind of a cool card that allows that to happen. Yeah, wow, cool. Metallic Rebuke. Instant, cost 3. Improvise. Your artifacts can help cast this spell. Each artifact you tap after you're done activating mana abilities pays for 1. Counter target spell unless the controller plays 3. This is cool. Now, even if you're not playing with that legendary creature we were just talking about, you can now tap 2 of your Thopters or servos or whatever, and now be able to counter a spell. And we just saw a thing where when you counter a spell, you get a token or a servo, right? So, wow, cool card. That would work well in most decks, especially since when a person's playing against the blue deck, if they're not properly using their mana, then that's their own fault. If they're not used to the old way of doing this. Reverse Engineering, 5, Improvise, and draw 3 cards. Ideally, it's a 2 cost, draw 3. That's a beautiful card. You're getting 3 cards for 2 mana. But let's face it, that Improvise is steep. That's 3, and even if you have your legendary, it comes down to 2. That's a 5 cost, potentially 2 cost card with tapping a lot of creatures. It's an alright card. Situational if you build properly for it, but it's not going to be doing a lot of mixing back and forth with other decks. Shielded Aether Thief. Flash. You may cast a spell at any time. You could cast an instant. Whenever Shielded Aether Thief blocks, you get a... Sweet. Pay 3, draw a card. Very cool. The energy tokens, again, very nice to have. The Flash, it's a good way to kind of get that extra energy token. And since there's a lot of other things out there that give you energy tokens, kind of a cool way to do it. Shipwreck Moray. When Shipwreck Moray enters the battlefield, you get 4 energy tokens. Pay 1, Shipwreck Moray gets a +2/-2 until end of turn. I would say it's a situational card. It's a decent amount of energy tokens, and it can be potentially pretty good. But it just depends on how many ways you can get energy tokens onto the field, I think. Skyship Plunderer. Creature human pirate. Ha! It's a flying pirate. Flying. Whenever Skyship Plunderer deals combat damage to a player, for each kind of counter on a target permanent or player, give that permanent or player another counter of that kind. That's cool. In this case, the white artifact we saw, or the white enchantment we saw earlier, got counters every time you played a card, or in this case, 1/1 counters or anything like that. Very helpful. Take into custody. Tap target creature. It doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. This is kind of what I was talking about a minute ago. It's not a bad card. It's only for one turn, but sometimes that's enough for one turn to get you through. Maybe more of a stall tactic or to be irritating. Is it worth it for one? Depends on your deck and how late into the game you need to go. Situational at best. Trophy Mage. When Trophy Mage enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an artifact card with converted mana cost 3, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. I think it's a pretty good card, especially depending on the artifacts that are out there right now that I've seen. I haven't seen the new ones. I'm assuming there's going to be some good ones, but it could be a cool way to get the artifacts out. 3 cost for a 2/2. Yeah, I think it'll work. Whir of Invention. 3 and X. Improvise, cool. Search your library for an artifact card with converted mana cost X or less. Put it into the battlefield, then shuffle your library. That's kind of cool. I really dig this card because there's always an artifact that you need. Now, it's 3 plus X, but you get in Improvise. You put 1 or 2 into your deck to go get that card you need and hope that you have enough artifacts on the field, or you hold it until you do. Good card, very situational, maybe give or take. So for some decks, it's going to be a must, but it'll work. Windkin Raiders, Improvise, Flying. It's alright. It'll be a 2 cost 4/3. Again, this goes back to that one card that was a 4/4, so it could potentially go down to 2. Just like that card, we're actually going to say that they're both situationally good cards. But the synergy is definitely there. And on to the black. Aether Poisoner. Death Touch. Very cool. When Aether Poisoner enters the battlefield, you get 2 energy counters. When Aether... Alright, so it's another way to get more servos onto the field. Artifacts, of course, plus Death Touch, which means whatever it touches is going to die, provided it doesn't have first strike. I'm calling this a good card. A lot of black cards are going to want to have this in their deck, because not only will it replace this card, so you're pretty much getting a kill card on the field, but then you're getting another 1/1 colorless servo artifact on the field. I'm calling it a win. Oh, I love black. Ally Strangler. Menace. Yeah, so if that doesn't scream Menace, it's kind of a cool card. It's called Aetherborn Rogue, so I'm assuming Aetherborn are much like spirits or something of that nature, where they come right out of the ether itself. Battle at the Bridge. Sorcery. Improvise. Target creature gets a... I love these cards. These cards are so cool, and especially since it doesn't improvise. You know, how many times at the late game does somebody have a 7/7 or a 13/13 if you're playing green or something stupid, and you don't quite have enough mana to deal with it? But look, all of those artifacts, all those little creatures you have, you know, that are artifacts as well. I like this card a lot. I think a lot of black decks, especially ones that are running any sort of artifacts at all, will definitely have it. Daring Demolition. Destroy target creature or vehicle. 4 costs for a destroy card. Granted, there are a lot of 5 cost cards out there, but as you can see, this is a sorcery. At least those 5 cost cards are instants. So what do I say to that? Don't bother. Yes, it's 1 less, but the beauty of having that instant card is if they play it, you can just get rid of it. Or if it's in the way or something like that, you can wait until they tap the cards for that vehicle to become a creature, and I think that's enough for me, because if they tapped all those cards to make their vehicle a creature and then you blast them with that instant, you win. They tapped all those creatures and they now have they no longer have that card. I don't think this is any good. Defiant Salvager. Creature, Aetherborn Artificer. Sacrifice an artifact or creature, put a 1/1 counter on Defiant Salvager, activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. This is another kind of cool card with a lot of synergy with the series. If you're putting a lot of 1/1 servos or something like that onto the field, or even clues, which from previous sets that we are allowed to use have a lot of clue cards, you can just start sacrificing them instead of using them for other things. I think this card is great. Fatal Push. Destroy target creature if it has converted mana cost 2 or less. Okay. Destroy that creature if it has converted mana cost to 4 or less. Instead, if permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn. That's a cool card, guys. This is kind of more what I'm talking about. First of all, it's an instant. And if you get into a fight and that creature dies and it leaves the battlefield, you can then play this at the end of your turn. It's an instant. You can get rid of that. Yeah, there's no reason not to have a card like this in your deck. Good card. Having 4 of those would not hurt. Or at least 2, and maybe 2 murders. Thin Hauler. Creature, insect. Improvise. Thin Hauler can't be blocked by artifact creatures. It's a 7 cost with Improvise. It could be really good. Situational at best here. Really high cost for 5/5. At least with the other ones you were only paying 5. In this case you're paying 7 or 6 in some cases, right? Situational, you know, depending on the deck. Maybe. 4th Bridge Prowler. Creature, human rogue. When 4th Bridge Prowler enters the battlefield, you may have target creature get a -1/-1 until end of turn. It's alright. You know, another human card if you're playing with humans that has a secondary ability. It's not bad. It could be useful. Gifted Aetherborn. Creature, Aetherborn Vampire, Death Touch Lifelink. For 2. Yeah. Good card all the way around. 2 costs for 2/3, so you're getting more than what you pay for ideally. Plus it's Death Touch and Lifelink. You put any sort of enchantment or weapon on this creature, and it becomes an official problem. I like this card a lot. Plus it's a vampire. If you're running any sort of coat of arms, which I don't think they have in this game, but anything that could be used like that where other vampires help each other out, that's pretty sweet. Glint Sleeve Siphoner. Menace. Whenever Glint Sleeve Siphoner enters the battlefield or attacks, you get 1 energy. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may pay 2. If you do, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. This is kind of a cool card, and the idea that it can attack, it has menace, so it can be hard to deal with. But more importantly, whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, you can keep popping it with cards. Gontia's Machinations? Kind of a weird... Mechanizations would be a better term, but who am I to judge? Whenever you lose life for the first time each turn, you get a energy counter. Pay 2. Sacrifice this card. Each opponent loses 3 life. You get life equal to the life lost this way. There you go. I like that card. It's a good way to kind of throw it back at your opponent. It's good just to have a couple sitting around, I suppose. I don't know if anybody else has noticed, and you'll probably notice when we get to red, almost every set has at least 1 angel, 1 demon, 1 dragon. I don't know if every set has a drake or something like that, but you'll notice that those 3 things are always there. Herald of Anguish, 5 + 2, Improvise, Flying. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent discards a card. Sweet! Sacrifice an artifact, target creature gets a -2/- till end of turn. This is awesome. Grade A card here, especially with Improvise. This is going exactly with what I said. You know, you don't go zombies anymore. Instead, you go with these artifacts. Pound out your artifacts, you then improvise them, and then you just start sacrificing them. Amen. This is cool. Night Market Aeronaut. Creature, Aetherborn Warrior, Flying Revolt. Night market aeronaut enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it if a permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn. It's okay. It's a 4-cost 2/2, possibly a 3/3 with flying. Could be worse. Renegade's Getaway. Target permanent gains indestructible until end of turn. Create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a cool card. It's good maybe to have one if you're playing a certain way, to prevent your cards from being just blown up. Plus, another servo card. So, hey, not bad. Good synergy. Resourceful Return. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. If you control an artifact, draw a card. I like this card a lot. I know a lot of people would argue with it, but it's good for dredge decks and stuff like that. Yeah, I like it. Sly Requisitioner. Creature, Human Artificer, Improvise. Your artifact can down the cost. Whenever a non-token artifact you control is put in the graveyard from battlefield, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. This is one of those cards that sound cool and could work well, but very situational. I'm not going to put this in any sort of good tier. Situational, maybe at best. You're pretty much running a solid artifact deck at that point. Vengeful Rebel. Creature, Aetherborn Warrior, Revolt. When Vengeful Rebel enters the battlefield, if you permanent you control left the battlefield this turn, target creature and opponent control gets a -3/-3 until turn of turn. Kind of a cool card. I definitely like it. 3 costs for 3/2, and you can use the ability to give a -3/-3 to your creature. It's usually enough to kill a creature in most cases, or at least hamper them enough that you won't have to deal with them for a turn. I'm gonna say it's an okay card. I don't know that it's worth anything a whole lot. Yahine's Expertise. Sorcery. All creatures get a -3/-3 until end of turn. You may cast a card with converted mana cost 3 or less this turn from your hand without paying its mana cost. That's a cool card. Anything to wipe the field is always kind of cool, especially if you're playing against weenie decks. Always having just one of these cards never hurt anything in your deck. I hope I'm saying this right. Yahine, Undying Partisan, legendary creature, Aetherborn Vampire. Cost 3. Alright. Haste. Whenever a creature an opponent controlled dies, put a 1/1 counter on Yahine, Undying Partisan. Sacrifice another creature. Yahine gains indestructible until end of turn. Alright. Yeah, this could be kind of cool if you build it right. If you put it in a deck where you've got a lot of cards that can destroy opponent's cards. It's black, so of course you do. So things like Bone Splitters and stuff like that. Maybe a red deck where you can take control of target creatures. Or a blue deck even. Things like Aether Shackles. Aether Shackles could be... Or Veldican Shackles, sorry. Could be useful. We'll have to see. Aether Chaser. First strike. Oh, by the way, Aether Shackles, if you're not familiar with it, is from the old 5th Dan or Mirrodin set before it was Scars of Mirrodin that eventually turned into another set. It's an old card. I may reference that a little bit more. This set is kind of looking like a Mirrodin set for me, where it's a lot of artifacts or cards that can do a lot of things with artifacts. Aether Chaser, first strike. When Aether Chaser enters the battlefield, you get 2 energy counters. When it attacks, you may pay 2. If you do, you get a 1/1 colorless servo. Okay. Oh, which reminds me, we did just start the red set. So black is nifty. There's some interesting cards, but just as nasty as always, if you will. So we'll have to see. Chandra's Revolution. Chandra's Revolution deals 4 damage to target creature. Tap target land. That land doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. 4 cost for 4 damage and you stop a land. If you play this on turn 4, then yes. Good card. It's going to hinder your opponent a little bit, but meh. Destructive Tampering. Choose one. Destroy target artifact. Creatures without flying can't block this turn. Situational at best here, guys. 3 cost. You're not. Everyone's going to have an artifact that you have to worry about, or it's a good way to stop the creatures. But if you're playing against the flying deck, it's not going to matter. It's an alright card. Embrawl Gear Smasher. Creature Human Warrior. Sacrifice an artifact. Embrawl Gear Smasher deals 2 damage to each opponent. That's kind of cool. If you're putting a lot of servos on the field or clues or anything like that, it's a good way to just hammering out damage. Enraged Giant. Improvise. Your artifacts can help cast the spell. Each artifact you tap after you've done activating mana abilities pays 1 trample haste. Again, another cool kind of synergy. It's got trample and haste 4/4 like the other cards. So instead of having flying, we have haste and trample. Trample's always good. Yeah, another good synergy card. And here's our dragon. Hopefully there's more than one, but I doubt it. Free Jam Regent. Creature Dragon. Improvise. Cool. Flying. 1 and red. Free Jam gets a +2 until end of turn. I'm digging this. If you have this card out on the field, that next turn you're going to be able to tap all that mana anyways, because if you tapped even 2, you can at least make them a 6/4. And if you have nothing to play, cool card. I'm digging it. I'm a sucker for dragons and drakes, if you couldn't tell. Frontline Rebel. Frontline Rebel attacks each combat if able. It's a 3 cost for 3. Man, it's alright. Hungry Flames. Hungry Flames deals 3 damage to target creature and 2 damage to target player. I mean, it's a 5 cost, or it's 5 damage for 3. Granted, it only does. It's a multi-purpose kill card. I like it. It's still doing damage to the opponent, but it's taking out a creature most likely. Yeah, I like it a lot. There are other options, but if you're playing more of a modern, or not even modern, but a standard gameplay, it'd be fine. Choose 1, target creature, or sorry, Invigorated Rampage. Choose 1, target creature gets +4/+0 and gains trample until end of turn. 2 target creatures get +2/+0 and trample until end of turn. This is kind of a way better situational card than a lot of these choose 1s that we've seen. You can either power up 1 creature or 2, and they both get trample. I like it a lot better. Carry Zev's Expertise. Sorcery. Gains control of target creature or vehicle until end of turn. Untap it. It gains haste until end of turn. You may cast a card with converted mana cost 2 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. Bam! This is exactly what I was talking about with that vampire, the legendary vampire from the other set. You play it, and then your next turn you gain control of an artifact. You use your Bone Splinters, which you can pay for free, to sack that card, and then destroy it. So you're out. They lose 2 cards, and you get a +1/+1 on your creature. It's there. I promise. Carry Zev, Skyship Raider. She must be a pirate. Yep, pirate. Legendary creature. First strike, menace. Very cool. Whenever Carry Zev Skyship Raider attacks a creature, create a legendary 2/1 red monkey creature token named Regavan that's tapped and attacking. Exile that token at the end of combat. You're essentially doing 3, but causing another problem for them. I like it. If you can power this card up at all, first strike, menace. Yeah, no, I like it. Definitely causes problems. Paya's Revolution. Whenever a non-token artifact is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, return that card to your owner's hand. Return that to your hand unless target opponent has Paya's Revolution. Revolution deals 3 damage to him or her. What? Whenever a non-token artifact is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, return that card to your hand. Unless target opponent has Pai's Revolution, deal 3 damage to him or her. So, although that's worded and it doesn't have any frickin' commas, I think, in the right place, or semicolons, it means you get to return artifacts to your hand whenever you sacrifice them. So good for sacrificing purposes, like any of those cards we saw where you sacrifice it, get a +1/+1 or something like that. Or if they do have it and you're playing against the same deck, they at least take 3 damage. So good on this. Ravenous Intruder. Sacrifice an artifact. Ravenous artifact gets intruder gets a +2/+2 until end of turn. This is kind of a cool card. If you got a lot of servos or other artifacts on the field, good way to go about it. Reckless Racer. First strike. Whenever Reckless Racer becomes tapped, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. Okay. Not a terrible card. Not something I like. The first strike is nice. Scrapper Champion. Creature, Human Artificer, double strike. This creature deals both first strike and regular combat damage. When Scrapper Champion enters the battlefield, you gain 2 energy tokens. When Scrapper Champion attacks, you may pay 2. If you do, +1/+1 counter. This is sweet, especially if you can get a lot of energy counters on the field. I like this card a lot. A lot of synergy. Shock. Shock deals 2 damage to target creature player. 1. Not the worst card I've ever seen. I think I'm a bigger fan of something like where you can do 3 damage for 1 or something like that. Siege Modification. Enchantment or enchant creature or vehicle. As long as it's a vehicle, it is a creature in addition to its other types, so forcing those vehicles to turn into creatures no matter what. Enchanted creature gets a +3/+0 and has first strike. That's a cool card. I like that one. Sweet Works Brawler. They make candy. Improvise. Your artifacts can help cast the spell. Menace. Another good situational card. It'll be a 3/3 with Menace that could potentially cost you 1. Wrangle. Gain control of target creature with power of 4 or less until end of turn. Untap that creature, gains haste until end of turn. Again, another great way to work with something like Bone Splinters or anything like that, where you can gain control of that creature and pit it against your enemy, or sacrifice it to sacrifice an enemy card, or anything like that. You need to get rid of as many creatures as you can to possibly power up yours, or even just getting rid of problems. Not a bad card. Aether Stream Leopard. Trample. When Aether Stream Leopard enters the battlefield, you gain an energy token. When it attacks, you may pay 1 energy token. If you do, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Alright. Kind of bad in my opinion, because it only supports itself 1 turn. It's not a +1/+1 counter. Yeah. Oh, we started green, guys. Sorry about that. Aetherwind Basker. Trample. Whenever Aetherwind Basker enters the battlefield or attacks, you get 1 energy token. Pay 1 energy token. Gets a +1/+1 until end of turn. Okay, so it's a 7/7 with Trample with this little side ability. Is it worth it? Well, it costs 7 to summon. It doesn't have Improvise, which I think would have made it a cool card. A card that went, a 3 for 7/7? I think so. If you're getting a lot of energy tokens on the field, I think it would be way better then. But, yeah, I'm not a fan. Aether Herder. When Aether Herder enters the battlefield, you gain 2 energy tokens. Whenever it attacks, you may pay 2. If you do, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature. Okay. Aid from the Cowl. Revolt. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent, this is an enchantment, so it just sits on the field. If a permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a permanent card, you may put it into your battlefield. Otherwise, you may put it on the bottom of your library. Does that mean land? Does that mean enchantment? Does that mean creature? All of those things are permanents. And it says you can put it onto the battlefield. That's a sweet card. And if it's an insert in sorcery, whew. for green and how many creatures they usually run, it's great. Now, it could hurt you because, say, you have a Titanic Growth, a Giant Growth, anything like that. That could hurt you just as much if you need those sorceries, but hey. Druid of the Cowl, cost 2, tap for 1, and it's a 1/3, effectively a wall with tap and add mana. I know it's a black, it's a common, but I'm not seeing the problem here. I don't think it's a bad card at all. I think it's a situational card depending on how much mana you need, but it's definitely a good way to get it there without... And the other part of having cards like that in your deck is simply that, you know, at least you're able to... At least, you're able to not sacrifice as many cards for straight up lands, where you could have, you know, instead of needing that 26 or even like 28 lands, right? Because that's, you're talking about almost a third of your real estate. If you can dump it down instead of 28 to 26, that's 2 more cost-effective cards you could have, right? And that's these creatures. At least they're creatures and land. Or say you go down to 24 and you have these 2. You know, you're saving yourself a little bit of hassle, albeit you need maybe 4 of these, but still, they're not bad. Greenbuilt Rampager. When Greenbuilt Rampager, it's a 1 cost, 3/4. When it enters the battlefield, pay 2 energy counters. If you can't return Greenbuilt Rampager to its owner's hand and get a 1. Ho ho! That is a good card. Okay. Because turn 1 you play it, and of course you can't keep it on the field, but you get a 1 token. Turn 2 you play it, of course you can't pay it, but you get a token. Turn 3 comes, you can officially play it. You have a 3/4 by turn 3 on the field, and it costs you 1. You have 2 more mana to play other spells. Worst case scenario, you're able to use it repetitively. Yeah, you can play it repetitively and be just fine. And, yeah, no, that's kind of a cool card. It's a good way to build yourself energy counters. Or have a good card out early or even later in the game. Good Wheel Liberator. Revolt. Green Wheel Liberator enters the battlefield with 2 1/1 counters on it if a permanent you controlled left the battlefield. Alright, another elf card for all those elf decks out there. And it can become a, you know, 4/3. I'm not seeing a problem here. Not a bad card. Situational for other elf decks, I think. Target creature gets a +3 and +3 until the turn. You get 2 energy tokens. Sweet. Hopefully I didn't skip one. Okay. Life Crafter's Gift. Instant. Put a 1/1 counter on target creature. Then put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control with a 1/1 counter on it. I like it. Situational card. You have to have a deck that's dishing out 1/1 counters everywhere. For instance, I use a lot of white weenie decks where whenever a human comes onto the field, it gets a 1/1. But if you put it out and there's already humans in the field, all those humans, and then I have an angel that gives all of my cards that already have a counter on it, 1/1 counters. If you build it right with, I think, a white deck or something like that, it'd be very powerful. Lifecraft Cavalry. Trample. Revolt. Lifecraft enters with 2 1/1 counters on it if a permanent you control left the battlefield this turn. It's an okay card. It's a 4/4, possibly a 6/6 with Trample for 5. It's okay. Monstrous Onslaught. Monstrous Onslaught deals X damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control as you cast Monstrous Onslaught. As a green deck, you're always going to have the highest converted mana cost, and they're going to be 5, 6, 7, 12. Especially if you have any sort of freaking Eldrazi's on the field. That's going to be easy. Is it worth 5? Maybe. Let's see what else is in green. Well, especially since you have all those cards where it has invest and it takes away those tokens, I think it could be worth it. Death Touch. Narman Renegade enters the battlefield with a 1/1 counter on it. If a permanent, yep, so it's got Revolts. Essentially a 2/3 for 1 with Death Touch. That's a good card. I can see green and black being very prevalent this game. Pima Aether Seer. Yeah, it's Pima. Creature Elf Druid. When Pima Aether Seer enters the battlefield, you gain an amount of energy counters equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. Cool. So if you've got a 7/7 on the field like we saw earlier or something like that, you're getting 5 energy tokens and or counters, and then you can... Okay, cool. Useful card. As long as you're playing big, and green is usually big. Ridgescale Tusker. When Ridgescale Tusker enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on it on each creature you control. Perfect. That works really well with the other cards we've seen from this set. Draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. You may cast a card with converted mana cost 5 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. Really nice card, especially with all these adding counters to cards things. I think it's just fine. Scrounging Bander. Creature, cat, monkey. Scrounging Banner enters the battlefield with 2 1/1 counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may move any number of 1/1 counters from the Scrounging Bander onto another target creature. Situationally very useful, but it takes a lot of planning and devoting time to building up counters. Silkweave Elite. Creature, elf, archer. Reach. This creature can block creatures with flying. Okay, revolts. Draw a card. Not a terrible card, especially with revolt. It's not bad. I think though that most flying cards are usually a little tougher than this, so this is good for that one-time block or having another elf on the field with a multitasking ability. Unbridled Growth. Enchantland. Enchantland has add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Sacrifice Unbridled Growth, draw a card. It's really cool in the idea that you can use it to just draw a card. It's essentially a 1-cost, 1-draw card ability. I'm not discounting this card at all. If you have any sort of multi-colors, again, it maybe takes away from the idea that you have so many lands in your deck. You know, especially if you're playing like a Slither deck, and eventually you have all the stuff you need on the field, you can sacrifice and just draw cards. I wouldn't discount it. Situationally good at best. Alright, it appears we're in the multi-color sets now. Spire Patrol. Creature, human, soldier. When Spire Patrol enters the battlefield, tap target creature an opponent controls. That creature doesn't untap during its controller's next step. Untap step. It's not bad. 4-cost, flying, 3/2. It's not bad. Hidden Stockpile. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn, create a 1/1. This is cool. I like this. Black-white too, so there's always going to be cards leaving your side of the field. With black, because you're going to be sacrificing your cards and stuff like this. Again, another great card to work with Bone Splinters or something like that, where you take over a card, or even if you just sacrifice one of your servos just sitting there with Bone Splitters. Very good card, I think. Renegade Wheelsmith. Whenever a Renegade Wheelsmith becomes tapped, target creature can't block this turn. It's not bad. You know, it's something to do. And it's not bad. Ooh, Planeswalker, boys. Ajani and gals, we don't judge here. Ajani Unyielding. Planeswalker Ajani. It costs 6 and it's a green-white. We've seen him as a green-white before, so this isn't anything odd or awkward. We've seen him work with I want to say is he from Mirrodin? We've seen him work against Tezzeret in the Mirrodin set. I think he's from Mirrodin. I could be wrong. So he starts with 4 counters, plus 2. Reveal the top 3 cards of your library. Put all non-land permanent cards revealed this way into your hand, and the rest at the bottom of your library in any order. That's always nice to have 2 extra cards, or at least put some of the stuff on the bottom. It says non-land though, so you have enough land. Exile target creature is controlled, gains life equal to its power. If there's a 12/12 on the field, but it's going to wreck all of your creatures, and you have enough little creatures, you may just say screw it. So not a bad spell at all. -9, there's the big daddy. Put 5 1/1 counters on each creature you control, and 5 loyalty counters on each other planeswalker you control. Whoa. My 1/1 servos, all of them are now 6/6s. Eat it. He's very high cost. It's going to take you at least 2, 4, 6, at least 3 turns to get that high. And that's if you don't end up using a second ability, and if he doesn't get attacked, and a lot of what ifs. But damn, that's a good card. This is how a planeswalker should be. A little overpowered, a little expensive, but kind of cool. Oath of Ajani. Woo! Looks like Ajani. He's joining the Oath. He's joining with all the other planeswalker. I'll have to go through and read the stories, but it looks like even Liliana joined after what happened with Sorin and all of that. And in case you didn't know, Sorin was the creator of Avacyn. He made Avacyn as the angel. All the angels didn't know about her, but were like, you know what? She's powerful. She's doing what she can to save the world. When he didn't help against the Eldrazi, the original Core, the other planeswalker from Core, came back and wrecked Avacyn, and it made that Sorin had to destroy it. But Sorin's thousands of years old planeswalker. I can see that being a problem. So this is kind of cool. Oath of Ajani. When Oath of Ajani enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. That right there is more than enough. Planeswalker spells you cast cause 1 less to cast. So playing planeswalkers are a little easier. Renegade Rallier. Creature, human warrior. When Renegade Rallier enters the battlefield, if a permanent you control left the battlefield, so revolt. Return target permanent card with converted mana cost 2 or less from the graveyard to the battlefield. Yeah, that's cool. Dark Intimations. That is essentially a 5-cost spell of 3 different colors of mana. Each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. When this discard a card, you return a creature or planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand, then draw a card. When you cast Blast Planeswalker spell, exile Dark Intimations from your graveyard. That planeswalker enters the battlefield with an additional loyalty counter on it. Whoa. Are we going to see Nicole Bolas in this set? Because that is one BA dragon. Alright, sorry. But basically, let me go over this. It's kind of a confusing card. Each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. They don't care. And then they also discard a card. You can then return a creature or a planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand. That's cool. Then draw a card. Yes, it's expensive, but the best part is here is when you cast Bolas Planeswalker spell. When you cast a Bolas Planeswalker spell, exile this card and it comes onto the field with 1 more counter on it. Which makes me think there is Bolas in this. Tezzeret's Touch. Tezzeret is another planeswalker. Tezzeret's Touch. Enchant Artifact. Enchanted Artifact is a creature with base power and toughness of 5/5 in addition to its other types. When Enchanted Artifact is put into the graveyard, return that card to its owner's hand. Sweet. It makes any artifact valuable. Yes. Tezzeret's one of my favorite planeswalkers. He conspires, unfortunately, with Nicole Bolas, the dragon planeswalker, who's pretty much just trying to destroy everything and is an angry individual. But Nicole Bolas is, of course, the dragon planeswalker. It's a dragon. And a lot of guys and people and planeswalkers are trying to stop Nicole. So anyways, Tezzret's one of my favorites. Tezzeret the Schemer. Ooh, he's a blue-black card. Planeswalker Tezzeret. Create a colorless artifact token named Ethereum Cell with sacrifice this artifact. Add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Yes, please. More mana every time. -2. Target creature gets +X until turn, where X is the number of artifacts you control. If you only have a couple, good way to power up your cards. If you have a lot, good way to take out a card. -7. So ideally on the 3rd turn of this card being out, or the 4th one if you don't want to kill it, you get an emblem with, at the beginning of combat, on your turn, target artifact you control becomes an artifact creature with base power and toughness of 5/5. Nice. Maverick Thopterist. Improvise. When Maverick Thopterist enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1-less colorless Thopter artifact creature tokens with flying. Not bad. It's gives you a 2/2 +3. Essentially, you're only paying 2 for 3 creatures. Could be good. Situational, of course. Rogue Refiner. When Rogue Refiner enters the battlefield, draw a card and you get 2 energy tokens. Sweet. Could be really useful if you're bringing cards to your hand or something like that. Wildfest Engineer. At the beginning of combat, on your turn, target artifact creature you control gets a +2 +0 until end of turn. I assume that means every turn. Not a bad card by any means. A 3/3 for 3, plus that ability, not bad at all. Winding Constrictor. If 1 or more counters would be placed on an artifact or creature you control, that many of those counters +1 are placed on the permanent instead. Sweet. If you get 1 or more counters, you get that many of those counters +1 instead. Basically, whenever something gets a counter, they get a counter +1. That's not a bad card at all, and it's a black-green for 2/3 for 2. Not seeing a downfall. Outland Boar can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. It's alright for 4. Aether Sphere Harvester. This is a vehicle. When Aether Sphere Harvester enters the battlefield, you get 2. Pay 1, Harvester gets lifelink until end of turn. Now, if I don't know if I remember if that means when you switch it to a creature and then back, you'll get it every turn. I can never remember. But the crew 1 means you only need 1 creature to bring this out, and it has flying and potentially lifelink. That's a devastatingly good card. That could turn a tide. Barricade Breaker, Juggernaut. It attacks each turn combat if able. 7/5. I'm just kind of sad it doesn't have trample. Improvise, 7 costs. Realistically, we're going to pay 3 or 4 for a 7/5. Not bad. Cogwork Assembler. Create a token that's a copy of a target artifact. That token gains haste, exile. Hit at the beginning of the next instant. That could be kind of cool. Consult Dreadnought. Cost, whoa. Crew 6, so you have to do a total of 6 attack. So that's what, 3 2/2s, 6 1/1s, 2 3/3s, 7 11. Dang. Consulate Turt. You get 1. Sweet. Pay 3, deals 2 damage to a target player. I can see a lot of red decks having this just to have it. Daredevil Dragster. Artifact vehicle. At the end of combat, if Daredevil Dragster attacked or blocked this turn, put a velocity counter on it. Then if it has 2 or more velocity counters, sacrifice it and draw 2 cards. It's a 4/4 for 3, and then you get to draw a card when it blows up. And a crew for 2. I'm calling it a winner, boys, but whew. A Filigree Crawler. When Filigree Crawler dies, create a 1/1 colorless stopped or artifact creature token with flying. It's alright. And one of the artifacts, by the way. Foundry Assembler. Artifact creature, assembly worker. Improvise, 3/3. If you just want a lot of artifacts, it can't be that bad. Heart of Kiran. Legendary artifact vehicle, so only one. Flying Vigilance, crew 3. You may remove a loyalty counter from a planeswalker you control rather than pay. That's kind of cool. Not worth it in my opinion, but cool. Implement of Combustion. Cost 1. Pay 1. Sacrifice it. It deals 1 damage to target player. And draws a card. So essentially a 1 cost and then a 1 cost. Alright, cool. Implement of Examination. Looks like they're doing one for each color here, much like the Pyrite Bombs and things like that. Implement of Examination. Sacrifice, implement of draw a card. So it's basically a 3 cost and a 2 cost to draw 2 cards. Implement of Ferocity. Pay 1, pay 1. I like this a lot better. It puts a 1/1 counter on target creature. It's more of a permanent thing. And you get to draw a card. I like that and the red one. Implement of Improvement. This one's not bad either. You gain 2 life for 2 and draw a card. Useful cards, especially if you want to stack up artifacts. Implement of Malice. Sacrifice it. It makes your opponent discard a card and you draw a card. Not bad. I wouldn't recommend it, but hey. If you're really trying to get your opponent to just, draw those cards or put them in their hand and then get them to discard it, it could work. Or just make it so they have nothing in their hand is always kind of cool. Iron Tread Crusher. Crew 3. 6/6. Cost 4. It's definitely a way to make your creatures viable, like I said. It's a way to do it. Would have been better with Trample or something. Life Crafter's Bestiary. It's kind of cool. Does like a hologram. Pay 3 to put it on the field. At the beginning of your upkeep, scry 1. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you may put a green. If you do, draw a card. Now this is cool. Cost 1, Merchant's Dockhand. Tap, so pay 4, tap X untapped artifacts you control. Look at the top X cards of your library. Put one of them into your hand and the rest of the bottom of your library in any order. What is X? Tap X untapped artifacts you control. Oh! So you tap all the artifacts you want. It's kind of a cool card if you're looking for 1 card, but if your deck's based on 1 card, or 3 cards even out of 60, could be interesting. Mobile Garrison, artifact vehicle. Whenever Mobile Garrison attacks, untap another target artifact creature you control. Crew 2. Kind of cool. If you tapped an artifact creature to tap this, yeah, it's kind of cool. Night Market Guard, artifact creature construct. Night Market Guard can block an additional creature each combat. Okay. Peace Walker Colossus. Another target vehicle control becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. That's a sweet card. It costs 3. Even if you just put it on the field to negate the effect of paying the crew costs. Yeah, kind of cool there. Planar Bridge. Legendary artifact. Search your library for a permanent card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Sweet. Just overall useful. If you have 8 mana on the field and you've got it and you're not pulling the cards you want, just go get it. As any card. Planeswalkers at the bottom of the deck, don't care. Sweet. Anyway, Renegade Map. Enters the battlefield tap, sacrifice the map, search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it to your hand, then shuffle your library. Doesn't put it to the field. Again, it's better than some things, but not a fan. Or maybe it'll cushion how you play your mana, stuff like that, but could be better. Reservoir Walker. 5 artifact creature construct. You gain 3 life and 3 of those tokens. It's alright. Scrap Trawler. Artifact creature construct. When Scrap Trawler enters or another artifact control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, return to your hand target artifact card in your graveyard with lesser converted mana cost. That's kind of cool because if you sacrifice a 6 cost, you can now bring back your 5. They did something kind of cool with this with the Kamigawa sets. It's cool. Servo Schematic. When Servo Schematic enters the battlefield or is put into your graveyard from battlefield, when it enters the battlefield or is put into the graveyard from battlefield, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact token creature. It's kind of cool if you're sacrificing, if you keep sacrificing this artifact and bring it back. Treasure Keeper. Artifact creature construct. When Treasure Keeper dies, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal an online card with converted mana cost 3 or less. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Put all revealed cards not cast this way at the bottom of your library in a random order. Yeah, looks fine to me. It's kind of a cool card. Universal Solvent. Destroy target permanent. It's really a high cost artifact. It's kind of a cool artifact just to have in case, maybe late game, because it says permanent. Any permanent. Planeswalker can be artifact. It can be a land for crying out loud. Untethered Express. Trample. When Untethered Express attacks, put a 1/1 counter on it. Crew 1. Ooh, that's a cool card. I would rock this. 4 cost, and it gets a 1/1 counter on it every turn it attacks. Plus Trample and Crew 1. Good card. Walking Ballista. XX. When Walking Ballista enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. Put a 1/1 counter on Walking Ballista. Remove a 1/1 counter from Walking Ballista. It deals 1 damage to target creature player. Potentially really cool card if done properly. What? Did I miss Bolas? Hold on. Oh, I'm disappointed, guys. There's a card in there that allows us to cast Bolas for cheaper, but he's not there. So we're going to take that as step 1 of ripping my heart out and just smashing it. Yes, we got a Johnny. Yes, we got Tezzeret. I love Tezzeret. But why even give us Bolas card? I don't understand. Maybe somebody can explain it to me on this. Please explain it to me why it's there, because I don't understand. Alright, let's talk about each color. White's got some cool cards in it. Cool ways to pull your creatures in and out and definitely work together well. Scroll back. We got white. Yeah, a lot of cool cards to pull cards in and out. Blue, if you're just looking for easy ways to just, especially with Baral, I hope I said that right. Counter spells, stuff like that, always a good control deck, and he's a great card to make that even cheaper and a realistic control deck back to the way we're used to playing it, or at least the way I was playing it when I first started. But definitely some cool cards there. From there we have black. A lot of synergy with this black. You can tell the black is supposed to be paired with another color, whether you're looking for energy tokens or creatures to take over, creatures to sacrifice, creatures to die. Very much their style, but you can tell they need just a little bit of help from another color, which is fine. It's not a bad thing. It's not as strong on its own this way, but I think it's just fine. From there we have red. It's not the hardcore, hard-hitting spells that we're used to. Yeah, there's some decent spells in there, but they're more oriented on your creatures, getting them haste, getting them on the field, getting them improvised. It's okay. It's not the best in my opinion of red, but you can tell that the gears were grinding there. They're trying to figure out a way to make red multi-talented. I don't mind it one bit. Red's actually kind of small. Then we move on to green. I'm not a super big fan of the green in this set. Personally, there's also not a lot there either. There's some big cards, there's some interesting cards, there's some cool cards that'll work with each other, and there is some good cards in there, but green by itself as a whole is much like red, where it's kind of got no legs under it. You need a lot of other cards to make it worth it. Looking through all the multicolored cards, we got two sweet new planeswalkers. In my opinion, Johnny is just godly destroying, and Tezzeret for 4 in a blue-black deck, and I'm a huge fan of the blue-black, which would help each other out really well. Like I said, with black, the gears are there, it just needs help. With green and red, the legs have been kind of cut out from underneath them, but for blue and white, they both have kind of what they need there. Maybe they're lacking in power, maybe they're lacking in a win condition, but really with a white card that says, I'm going to win the game, you can't kill me this turn, and I'm back at 20, try again. I mean, what are they going to do? Yeah, with that said, both white and I feel blue both have the cards they need to be successful, with maybe 1 or 2 cards, whether they're artifacts or planeswalkers, or maybe they are paired with another thing. But red and white to take the biggest beating here. Black also has the legs there, but it doesn't have the top half at all. It just needs that bit of support. So very cool set. I was hoping to see a lot more things from Mirrodin, not just the Ajani and Tezzeret. But you can tell that they're maybe a little sad that they tore Mirrodin apart, with the Phyrexian Plague. Who knows, maybe this place will be next for the Phyrexians. The Phyrexians are hard to beat. They had to wish them into oblivion and still barely won. And now they're back and they didn't go down. And Mirrodin didn't go down without a fight, but they still went down all the same. What do I think of this set overall? It's a cool set. It's going to complement a lot of cards that are already out there. A lot of cards that are in this current set. We don't have core sets anymore, so I think that kind of hurts some of this. Where you're going to be looking for, in the real world, in tournaments, where you're not playing modern, but you're playing standard, it's going to hurt. Now, luckily, though, for this particular set in our game, Magic Duels, which is why I'm doing this, this has a ton of potential. You have things like Bone Splitters that can really, 1 cost card, 2 cost, 1 cost card. You sacrifice your creature, your opponent then has to sacrifice a creature of your choice. Guess what, guys? That goes over indestructible. Who cares if it gives a card indestructible? They have to sacrifice it. That means your opponent is being targeted, not you. Not your card. There's a ton of cards in here that are going to go really well with what we already have. Plus, we have 2 more Planeswalkers, including the Oath of Ajani, which is going to power up those frickin' ridiculous Planeswalker decks there. This deck is cool. This set is nice. It's got a lot of cool things in there. There are a couple things I don't like. I feel like with this set and the previous set, the energy tokens have fallen short. There should be a lot more ways. There should be a lot more energy token stuff attached to stuff. Maybe it's because we're only getting a partial set. Who knows? But I do like this set a lot. If you guys like what you saw here, and you'd like to see more stuff from Magic the Gathering Magic Duels version edition, please hit the like button. Comment down if you have any questions. If you feel I missed something, we all make mistakes, and that's perfectly fine. If I mispronounce things, whatever the case may be, I'll do my best to correct them. So leave a comment below. If you want to see future content and you want to see me keep kicking stuff out, hit subscribe. I do plan on doing, I'm going to do through all the walkthroughs of these ones here. I'm going to explain how it goes. I'm going to play it a couple times, and I'm going to play through it, and I'm going to play through it enough until I get it right that turn, and I'll explain all of my moves and what I'm doing then. So my name is Fad Sword. Thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll see you next time.